We'll start with David Ubben.
Hey, T, real quick, what have you seen out of your freshman receivers, and have any of those guys stood out in your mind?
Yes, the first thing I would say is speed. That was something that we wanted to address in last year's recruiting class. We wanted to replace the size that we lost, with Juwan and Quay as starters, but also upgrade in the speed department. We want to push the ball down the field and match up mismatches on offense, and you can't do it without speed. And so the addition of Velus Jones, transfer from USC, someone who I was familiar with, who's a 4-3 waking up in the morning. Jalen Hyatt, having the addition of Jimmy Holiday, Jimmy Callaway, those guys can absolutely run. And so we're moving guys around. The one thing that I've been noticing about them, if you just had to sum it up in one word, is that they can run.
We'll go to Trey Wallace, followed by Blake Topmeyer.
T, what have you seen out of Velus Jones transferring in from Southern Cal, somebody that you were familiar with for a long time now? How's he been able to adapt to what Jim Chaney's doing, what you guys are doing with the offense, and do you see him being a threat as well in the kickoff return game?
Definitely will be a threat in the kick return game, both as a kick returner, kickoff returner, and a punt returner. But the one thing that you can't replace when guys transfer, you can't underestimate, is experience. And even though he's new to our system, he's played college football at a major level. And he's played in some big moments and been called on in some big moments. So he's new, just like the freshmen are, the true freshmen are. But the one thing that he has a leg up is that he's been in college football for a few years. He's a veteran. And so he's able to plug and play at different positions without panicking because he's been there before. So I like what he's doing. Again, he's playing outside, he's playing inside. We're doing things very creative with him, motions and putting him in the backfield. That's how he was used at SC when I was there as the coordinator. Not familiar with what they did with him last year, but we know what kind of talent he is, and certainly a guy that we want to get the ball to.
Real quick, make sure if everybody could please mute your mic after you ask a question, and also anybody else, please mute your mic. We'll go to Blake.
Hey, T, with Josh Palmer, where does he need to continue to develop and grow as he maybe steps into an even bigger role this season? And then also with Ramel Keaton, what growth have you seen from him going from freshman to sophomore?
I'm so excited about how they're playing. The retention from last year, you don't have a spring and you really have an abbreviated and modified training camp. So there's a lot of teaching that you would normally have as a receiver coach in training camp that we're not able to do because they're in school and you're on the 20-hour rule. So the time is cut a little bit. So you're having to lean on their experience and ultimately their intelligence. And you just spoke of two of the more intelligent receivers that I've ever coached, Ramel and Josh. And both of them were having to be moved around. One thing about operating under COVID is week to week, you can have a different lineup at any position. If someone's out because of tracing, because they may be positive, and injuries. So what the approach I took as a receiver coach was to teach every receiver every position. And because you may line up a week playing a different position because of whatever reason, right? So Ramel has shown the ability to do that. Josh has shown the ability to do that. Both of them are sure-handed guys. Both of them are great route runners. Both of them play above the rim. Those so-called 50-50 balls that you put in the air. You noticed last season, Josh made great catches down the stretch for us on those 50-50 catches where he played above the rim, out-jumped the guy, and pulled the ball in. Ramel, you saw him kind of emerge towards the bowl game, big catch in the red zone, jumping in the air, playing above the rim. Both of those guys can jump, they can run, they're smart, and you'll see them being used in a lot of different ways this season.
We'll go to Patrick Brown, followed by Brent Hubbs.
T, what have you seen so far this preseason from Malachi Wyman, and where does he kind of need to come along the most between now and the start of the season?
Right, he has probably the most upside of everyone because he's coming in probably the most raw of them all. You know, Jalen Hyde lined up at wideout, you know, his whole career. Jimmy Callaway, Holiday was a quarterback, so there's some development there, but he was a quarterback, so he's very familiar. Well, Malachi was kind of this kid, and for 3 years, you know, a young man played in a kind of a wing tee offense and was a basketball player during the offseason. Rarely went through spring practice, wasn't on a big-time 7-on-7 circuit type of guy, and would just show up and play football and just kind of go off natural skills. You see basketball transfers to his football game where he plays above the rim. He's tough. He's physical. He knows how to body people up, you know, just like rebounding the basketball. Sometimes you take contact and you initiate contact to get separation. Those skills have carried over from Malachi on the football field. He is a bright young man that just needs a lot of reps. You know, he's one of those young players that the more reps he gets, the more you start seeing him shine more and more every day. He has a want to. He's that guy that's young but doesn't mind making mistakes, and he doesn't lose confidence when he does make mistakes. And when you get on him, he wants to be out there. He wants to get better. I really like what he's bringing to the table, and we're just going to continue to push his skill set out of him as we go along.
Brent?
T, when you talked just a minute ago about, you know, you got to be flexible in your lineup and move guys around and have that ability. Then you're talking about trying to get a bunch of young guys ready to play. As a coach, how do you balance not overloading the freshmen, but also figuring out a way to have them where they can plug and play if you have those injuries or quarantines and that type of thing? How do you go through that process?
It's about maximizing every meeting and every practice on very direct and detailed teaching. I'm having to change the way I teach. When you have 2 hours to meet, you can kind of hit 5 or 6, 7, 8 different things. When you have 30 minutes to meet and you have to be on the field in 30 minutes, you have to be very specific about what you're teaching and very detailed about what you're teaching, and you can't bounce around. So what I find myself doing now in adapting to the new way of having to do things is focusing on one thing, maybe 2 things at the most that day, and let's get better at this specifically. And then we're able to go to film and say, we focused on this for practice. Did we do this or not? If we did do that, and I'm satisfied with that skill set, we'll move on to the next thing. If not, we stay there because you can't progress until you perfect. And so that's where we are. I've really changed my teaching approach in meetings and on the grass to try to maximize the opportunities that we have during this time.
We'll go to Vince Ferrara, followed by David Pascal.
Can you talk about D. Beckwith, what you've seen from him early on?
Yeah, D bounces back and forth between the wide receiver room and the tight end room. He's kind of a hybrid receiver type of body type. He hadn't been around for a few days, but when he was there, he was progressing quickly. He's fast, he's big, he's physical. Young man who the nuances of the game and the feel from when he's outside versus when he's inside, when he's in the core, possibly putting his hands down, maybe. We haven't decided yet we're going to actually progress him that far at that position yet. But he has the skill set. He has the want to. He's a young man that's always around asking questions, always trying to watch extra film and improve himself. And that's what you want from a young guy. Just need a lot of reps.
T, I know last year you had a game where you threw for 415 yards. There were some other games where y'all threw for 160, 150. What gives you the confidence that this year's passing game overall is going to be more consistent?
Well, it's the second year with the same play caller. You know, that hadn't happened a long time around here. So I'm excited about that just being involved. And then to be on the staff, and I'm happy for that for our quarterbacks. You know, when language carries over, when ideas carry over, there's a cohesion there. There's a chemistry there. When Jared can look to the sideline and get a call from Jim and understand what the expectation of that play is. With expectation comes anticipation, comes an opportunity to eliminate problems. And when you do have problems, an opportunity to minimize the destruction. on the whole offense. And so you had to kind of feel and see early in the season. And then once we kind of say, okay, this is what we are comfortable with doing, this is what we do very well, we kind of stuck to that second half of the season. Going into the spring, that was the idea. Now we're in training camp with new faces, new bodies in there at different positions. But the one position that has been consistent in two places is the quarterback and the coordinator. And so I think just having a second year of being comfortable with the play calls, the expectation of the plays, the familiarity of the plays is going to help us overall from that position, and it's going to trickle down through my room. I know in my room we're a lot more comfortable with language, with expectation, and why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we calling this on 3rd and 3? I know there's a corner route, but are we really trying to throw that? So long story short, familiarity, comfort level, and understanding what we're trying to do, I think is the benefit in that.
We'll go to Jordan Kramer, followed by Rob Lewis.
T, you've had a fair amount of turnover in your wide receivers room this year. How would you kind of assess the early chemistry between the quarterbacks and the wide receivers in camp?
It's been about as good as you can expect. Obviously, these young men went in their separate ways after spring, and we're in different cities. We slowly started to get them back at limited opportunities, and I think that you couldn't ask for a better chemistry with the situation. And I think Jared is very direct about what he likes and what he wants, how he wants routes to be ran. He has Ramel and Josh and Cedric Tillman, guys that he's played with, a few years, and they know him, that he knows their body language. There's certain things that you pick up on as a quarterback, how a guy sinks his hips, how a guy gives you what we call indicators of when he's coming out of a route, things of that nature. He's filling that out with the younger guys, but he anticipates a lot better with our veteran receivers because they've had more time together. And that's where we're trying to bridge the gap between the reps that were lost with not having a spring and a very limited offseason, and trying to put that all together and go and play a game here in a few weeks. So it's a great question, and that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to get them as many reps as they can to build that trust, if you will, between quarterback and wide receiver.
Rob?
Coach, with 4 freshman wide receivers, and you touched on it a little bit ago, but do you try to teach them all 3 positions at once? Do you try to build them a little package so they get on the field quicker, or is it individualized? How do you go about coaching those young guys?
Yeah, I put them in the hardest situation first, and that's playing inside. Playing inside is the hardest receiver position that you can play because there's so much action there. You see people crossing your face on blitzes. You see backers, safeties, nickel backs. It's a lot of things that happen inside. So I've placed all of them inside when they first got here. And that adjustment to move outside becomes clearer. It's a bigger field out there. It's more grass. You can see and anticipate coverage and disguises, things of that nature. So that's what I did. That was my approach, is to make it as hard as possible early and then start to put them in the positions that feel more comfortable to them. And they've all responded well. And you look at Jalen Hyatt and Jimmy Callaway and those guys, they were natural slot receivers anyway. And so when they got the opportunity to move outside, they really like that. But that's what I did. My approach was to put them in the toughest position early, let them sink first, and then teach them how to swim and get out of it.
Hey, T, I was just curious as to your impression of the young receivers' football IQ upon arriving on campus, and your impressions of Cedric Tillman this fall camp.
Yeah, it's about bridging the language gap. They're all smart. They wouldn't great players. You don't find many saying that. For me as a coach, it is bridging the language gap with all of them. I know you did this on your high school tape, but what do you guys call that? Oh, we called it this, coach. Well, you know what? At Tennessee, we called it that. And how were you taught to do that in high school? Well, this is how we teach it here. Oh, okay, cool. And then they move on. And so for me, having so many at the same time, I've been here before at USC, signed to 5 receivers in 1 year there. They all played as freshmen and did really well. But it's about bridging the language barrier and language gap between what we're saying here, what they're used to hearing, and what do I need to say as a coach to get the result that we need as an offense. And once we kind of got over that, now we're all speaking the same Tennessee language. We're speaking Jim Chaney's language now and Jared Garantano's language. And now we're moving forward.
David?
How is the culture committee? What do you want that to look like once the season starts, and what is that sort of practically going to look like?
Yeah, we have weekly meetings, and some of them are short, some of them are long. If there's a topic that we need to really discuss and try to bring it to our team, then we do that. Sometimes we're just checking in. We have things that we've put in place that we want to do. Like this week, I just want to keep up with things that we put in place to have happen in the next few weeks. And so for us, it's about just being organized, having a great communication platform for our players, our staff, and members of the culture committee, sharing those thoughts with Coach Fulmer, Coach Pruitt, and getting things done. And I think that you guys have seen a lot of the benefits of that with speakers that we've had come in. Trey kind of leading the charge on the march from Saturday. I think these young people are doing a really good job of getting their thoughts to the forefront, speaking their minds, and not only just doing that, but putting those thoughts and those things and feelings into action. It's all about action. And this is something that we don't want to forget about when football season starts. So we'll continue our meetings, and Coach Pruitt and Coach Fulmer have been very supportive of their ideas, wants, and needs. And we've acted upon just about everything the players have wanted to do.
Last question, we'll go to Rick Russo.
Hey, T, how you doing today, man?
What's up, Rick? How you doing, man?
Okay, so listen, two questions real quick. You've coached, and you've played in this league. I was curious about playing a 10-game all-SEC schedule. Your thoughts on that? And then last Saturday's game with Caden didn't turn out the way you wanted it to, but talk about the excitement of that, and did Dion have anything to say about Caden after that game?
Yeah, but playing in the SEC and now coaching 10 games of SEC ball, man, I mean, what else would you want to have? I mean, this is awesome. Whether you're a fan or a player or coach, you get concerned a little bit about the rigor of it and the grind of it all. We all know what that's all about, having a COVID year and all of that. But Saturdays, it won't be hard to get up for those games, I'll tell you that. So I'm excited to see what that's about and what the future of having an all-conference schedule this year would mean for us in the future. So I'm all excited. As far as Caden and the game, it didn't turn out that way that you want. But I tell you, I've always told my kids, whether it was Amari, I remember Amari having a bad game in high school. He was down on himself. And I grade each one of my kids. Like, I give them the same grading system that I do with my players. And Caden and I, we went through every play and we graded them. And the first thing you focus on is what can you do better? And then you lift them up and say, dude, we're going to get better and better and better and better. And you really take into account, just like our players are experiencing, seeing young men go out and play full games without having spring practice, without having full-term training camps, and then you're thrown out there to go play on national TV. So at 16 years old, I couldn't be more happy for my son, who kind of stood up there and said, we lost as a team, we're going to win as a team, and I got to do better. And he's been up here every day training with me. He wants to do better for his team and move forward. So I'm happy that the young man got that kind of stress and pressure early. He's a baseball kid as well. And the first thing Dion told him after the game was put the football down and play baseball. And I was kind of like, but no, he's doing a good job managing both sports.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, guys. Take care.